Welcome to Native Sessions here at AD Sound Lab. My name is Tony Wachiku, and for the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to be with Simo Cell and Batu. Give them up. And we're going to delve a little bit deeper into the world of sound design within music production using primarily REAKTOR. But before we delve in, perhaps starting with you, Batu, tell us a little bit about your road to music production and why particularly working with sound is of interest to you. Two should be on.
Hello. Okay, so yeah, I've been producing music for quite a while, but I think there was a point for me when I started doing like a university course where I started thinking more about sound, I guess, rather than just like making like a beat and just putting like a kick drum and a snare and stuff like that. It was more like maybe you can go deeper into creating sounds and kind of thinking about what those sounds could convey to someone. And it was kind of a way that I feel like I made my music more personal, I guess, to myself. Like it was like kind of getting more invested in like actually what I was making rather than just, it's like, oh, here's a loop of dubstep drums with like a bass underneath it. It was a bit more like put time into it and go down a bit of a journey with the sound. So I started learning about like electroacoustic music and stuff like that, and thinking about how those producers kind of did stuff, and yeah, just kind of got hooked on kind of going deeper into plugins, I guess.
Was it the emotional side of sound that was more interesting, or the kind of the dynamics of it, or a mixture of both, maybe?
I think like the dynamics and just how, but also just how frequencies, I guess, as opposed to like compositional things, can really make an effect. So if you think a lot about like timbre and like textures and stuff, you can like evoke something which is just as emotional potentially, or you can kind of manipulate things a lot. Yeah, and it's just really interesting, I think, how sound can kind of do that, and sounds which are really alien to people can like evoke something like an image or whatever else. So yeah, I kind of think about that kind of thing a lot.
Simo, how about you?
Yeah, hello. So I've been into music, electronic music, for like 12 years, something like that. I started by DJing. I was not really into production. Can be just a detail, but it's very important because what I was playing influenced a lot what I produced. So when I started to produce, it was more, I just wanted to have tracks to play, but it was not like, I didn't have any like ambition or anything. It was just like to fill my DJ sets. So basically I started to copy many tracks that I like. I started by produce some B-more track, so music from Baltimore. And depending on what I was playing, on my process of discovering music, depending on the style I discovered, then it influenced a lot what I produced. So I did many different styles, and my first ambition was not to like be personal or anything. So it's very different from Omar. So I started by making B-more, then it was house, then UK garage, then acid, and I was putting the drums or the track, and I was just trying to like copy exactly the kick and the pattern at the same place.
So you're Mr. Grid then. The grid is your friend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and after that, it was a very long process. I mean, I've been producing music for 8 years, and it took me maybe like 4 or 5 years to be very happy with something, and yeah, it took me time before I wanted to release something. So yeah.
So at what point did you start to get your own identity? You know, you've talked a lot about modeling other music genres to get confidence up and find music to play. But at what point did you start moving away from modeling stuff and start to personalize your music production?
I think it's when I discovered the power of sound design, when I discovered how to use effect, and the main limit I had was the skills, the technique. So it took me a long time before being happy with something because I was just learning. So I was, by copying other tracks, I was learning how it was made. So it was the main process. And after like maybe, as I said, 4 years, I was, okay, now I know how to do many things, many different things. So what do I really want? And it started like that. So by messing around with effects and trying to find my own signature. And I would say that right now, what's keep me like pushing my music is that I just want to have my own signature. This is the most important.
I mean, I guess what's really cool for both of you is that, you know, you're both obsessed with sound design, right? So I guess what attracts you, maybe Batu, you can, kick this off. When you're listening to music, I guess you're trying to clock the frequencies of stuff or whatever, but what attracts you? Is it mostly the drama of a sound, or what timbral qualities really kind of jump at you?
I think dynamics is really important, and something which is potentially lost often in dance music is like...
Is it all has to be banging and one level? Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas like dynamics really are like super powerful. So that's something I definitely think about a lot. And yeah, sometimes it depends, you know, like I kind of have two different minds for this, because when I'm DJing, you know, potentially you're going to look for a track which is like really raw and everything is saturated and really squashed, and you can use that to your advantage in a set. But I think in terms of production, lots of different things. I think the thing is, it's still always going to be about how it's put together. Like, you wouldn't just want to listen to single sounds. It does have to be like music in terms of there's like a relationship between different sounds. So I think it can work on a lot of different levels, really, why something is kind of good or why it jumps out to you. But yeah, I definitely look for music which I think has like, some kind of interesting sound. I think if tracks which like everything sits in a box, whether it's compositionally or kind of technically, if everything is kind of something that you kind of understand before you've even listened to it, that tends to be quite boring. And I kind of, I want stuff which is going to be a little bit more fresh and kind of captivating. And so that's something I definitely think about a lot.
So from a compositional point of view, when you're starting out, you know, you're at your studio, laptop or whatever, I guess you're not the conventional bring out the piano C-7 kind of guy. Clearly not. So how do you start? How do you gain inspiration? How do you find a sound that will then inspire you to then go a little bit deeper? Yeah,
so this is something that I kind of think about a lot, and I spend a lot of time kind of creating this, like, to get to a point where I'm inspired to write a track usually takes quite a long time. But what I'll do is basically start experimenting for as long as it takes. So it usually revolves around samples. Like, I do a lot of sampling. So I'll take certain sounds I've just collected from other tracks, or just interesting weird noises. Like, I record my own like sounds as well. And I also like build up a sample bank constantly when I'm writing of like sounds which I find interesting. So I've got a big folder of them.
Is it file managed?
It's a little bit.
Talk about that later.
But I'll start basically adding plugins onto bits of sound, and often put like that maybe on the sample on a keyboard, so I can play different notes, and I'll pitch it miles up or pitch it miles down, and just adding more effects and basically just seeing what happens with all of that. And like often it's like a resampling process. So I'll bounce something out, and then I'll start adding more effects to that. And I just collect masses and masses of like either loops or just like one-off sounds, and kind of just see what happens with it, really. And it kind of means often when I'm writing, I'm in this like weird limbo period where there's nothing like actually...
Got loads of stuff.
Yeah. There's nothing.
Variations of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I think what it means when you're in that point and you don't have like a kick drum or whatever being like, this is the track, is that you've got a lot more you've got this like kind of lucid, like kind of freedom, like and yeah, it means you're more instinctive. I think basically what I'm trying to look for is doing something instinctive and like just following what the sounds create and what the plugins create, rather than like, you know, a distinct idea of what it's going to be. But then once I've got inspiration, there's a point at where you're turning it into like an actual track rather than just like a sound. But yeah.
Simo, is that similar approach, would you say?
I've got a different approach because I use samples, but not in the same way. I never record samples. I really like MIDI, so it's a different approach, and I'm gonna use lots of MIDI clips. So what I do when I start to produce is always the same process. So basically, I choose a BPM. It depends on my mood, from 80 to 160. I don't know. And then I will start to make drums, to mess around with drums. So basically, I always start with rhythm, because I'm not very good at making melodies. And this is you were speaking about like sound design, and I think I went right into sound design because I'm not good at making melody, and I can't I can't deal with it. I don't know why. And so sound design was a good option.
Excuse.
Yeah, a good excuse, to make not melodies, but more like textures and mood ambiances. So yeah, that's why I'm really into sound design. It's like another way to write music. It's very different from the theoretical way of doing it. So yeah, basically I start by choosing a kit drum. It depends on the kit drum. I mean, I've got many kit drums with battery, for example. Like you've got many examples. So at the beginning, the sound is not personal at all. I don't care.
Can you show us?
Yeah.
Would you like to see? It's rather than talking. What should we do? Should we do? Yeah. Let's have a look.
So yeah, basically I'm going on battery, and I'm gonna choose a kit drum. Like you've got many, as I said, so you can just. Can we have sound?
Sound, please.
Yeah, it's on. Yeah. Yeah. So you've got, many samples, many kit drums on your left. So it's the same. I mean, I don't think about it. I just choose one randomly. So let's take this one that I kind of like this one. And so the fact is, with a computer, because maybe 90% of my music is coming from a computer. So you have to find a process, because sometimes it's a bit tedious to make music on a computer. You just have your mouse, and it's not fun, and it's not intuitive. So basically, what I wanted is try to find a way to make it more simple and more fun. So I started to use arpeggiators, and so basically, I use the computer to write rhythm and to write drums. So I'm not doing anything, and the computer is doing the thing for me. And then I choose, it's like many mistakes, and then you choose the mistake you like. I mean, it's not a mistake, but more like a hazard.
A snapshot, right? I mean, of interest, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So here is how I do. So for example, in REAKTOR, you've got mini sequencers that you can add. Like this one is called a Euclidean polyplexer. There is a REAKTOR library on the internet. It's like a very strong community with people very dedicated, and they make many software. So you've got many options. And so basically, each frame, like with those colors, represent a note. You've got the pitch here, and each note refers to a drum. So for example, those drums refers to one note, and then the MIDI. I'm gonna send a MIDI signal from REAKTOR to battery. So I'm gonna show you. Nope. I didn't do the connection. Sorry. So
That's okay. It's good to see.
yeah. So basically, what I did is like a connection to send the MIDI from reactor to battery. So here we are. So here is the kick is played by reactor and then in battery, and then I'm gonna do many different layers with the other frames. So here it is. So at the beginning it's a bit messy and you mess around with many different drums. At the end you've got like a cool rhythm.
Anyway, you're kind of in this process. You're trying to find pockets. So as each layer appears, you're almost like using each slot to find a pocket of percussion.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes some drums are not working, so you just like mute some of the drums, like this. It's just like there is no goals actually. The goal is what you're doing right now, and you're messing around. Sometimes it takes like 30 minutes and then maybe more. And also I can use like some effect on it just to so the sound design starts at this moment when you have like some delays, for example. Yeah, there is no problem to use like a preset or anything. Like I was talking with some of my friends, and they were saying, "Oh, I can't use preset because I'm not doing them." But I mean, it's even the same with kit drums. You didn't like provide all the drums.
All sounds is a preset at some point.
Of course.
Even a sine wave is a preset. Right?
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
a whole other conversation. Sure.
And this is the very first beginning of the process. So you're gonna change some stuff after it. But at the beginning, it's just like, okay, just try to click everywhere, just mess around and just have fun. There is nothing to think about. So now we have like a delay on it. Can be fun, and then so what I'm looking for is like cool grooves. Even if the drums doesn't sound great, it's just like the placement of the drums one between another. And after that, I can sometimes replace the drums in it. So for example, I'm pretty happy with this MIDI clip, for example. So the first thing I do is I record it. So basically, now we have like a MIDI clip which is written, and I didn't do anything. That was the computer who did it. And then you can modify. You can like take the control at this moment.
When you talk about the computer did it, yes, the computer did it, and the computer should get 100% of the publishing. But we'll talk about that another time. But what you're doing is curating, right? Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, you're the person who's going, okay, spit out this randomness, and then you're the one who's basically that's amazing.
Of course.
And making sense of it all.
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
I mean, I have the control. The computer doesn't have the control.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, it's a bit like we'll talk about your process in a second, but it's almost like it's almost like you're seeking inspiration. Do you know what I mean? So rather than the fact that it is random and just coming at you, that's the exciting thing, because you actually don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The fact that you're just pulling up some random sounds, pulling up some random, MIDI events, and then seeing what happens. And then once you're excited about something, you can then process it, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the other way around, which is a lot of the time is, okay, I'm thinking C minor 9 or whatever. This is like, just bring stuff at me. That's great. Utilize it. Yeah?
Yeah, true. Exactly. And so what I want is not just have one MIDI clip, but many MIDI clips. So I'm gonna like do this process like many times to have like many different clips, and it's like a box of ideas, and maybe after like I fill the track with like 10 MIDI clips with different rhythm, and then I try to make them work together. So maybe I won't use all these ideas, but what I want is just have many ideas. This is the first process, and then I will like maybe do the same thing with another sequencer, because what is nice with REAKTOR is that you can have many different options. So for example, I'm gonna use spiral. And it's like, yeah, with the same drum kit, it's gonna like, create new patterns as well. Then you can like mute some sounds as well. I mean, it's just, yeah, experimenting. So like we already have like a rhythm in 2 seconds, which is like pretty fun and pretty quick.
And I guess because it's not audio, it's still MIDI, you've still got lots of flexibility, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
That's cool.
I've got lots of control on it after it, and it's not what I like with MIDI is that you can keep on modified drums after maybe you cut your session, and the day after you listen to it again, and you can modify stuff. Like for example, I'm gonna modify the pitch of the hat. You can modify the envelope and everything, and like, for example, if I'm not happy with this hat, then I'm gonna look for another hat in the bank, and we can replace it. So what I like is that you can. It's like nothing is done, nothing is fixed, and I mean, at one point you have to decide what you want, but it's after. But on the first the first or the two first stations, I like the fact that it's not fixed and that you can move and go back and go after, and yeah.
So because in terms of the composition or ideation side of it, you want as much flexibility as possible, right? Yeah. Yours is quite a similar approach, right? But with audio. Should we have a delve in?
Yeah, so it's really similar, but yeah, tend to just use your audio and not necessarily focus on like drums quite as much. I mean, often it'd be like rhythmic things, but yeah, I tend to leave drums much later in the process. Like drums are kind of what I use, I guess, to kind of solidify the idea. When I've kind of got an idea, it's more kind of it's more kind of like the part which is the part where I'm making it a track rather than making it like the
It's like the meat and potatoes, so to speak.
meat and
Do you know what I mean?
potatoes. Yeah, exactly.
Or veg.
yeah.
Sure.
But often I'll use like rhythmic sounds, and even what I'm going to show like now is I'm like using like a drum loop which I've bounced out before, to then running it through like some weird effects and basically seeing what happens.
Let's see that.
I don't use Ableton, so bear with me, everyone.
I'm gonna help you.
So this is Prism. That's an effect in REAKTOR, right?
Yeah. Is it bypassed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's just a little loop of some drums. But then there's a REAKTOR effects thing called Prism, which is really fun because it's just one of those tools where you can put something in and get something completely different out, which is kind of what I'm looking for in this part of the kind of composition stage. Yeah,
I looped.
Cool. So this is like the mix. You can tell it's it's just completely changing it. And it kind of like makes things into tones essentially. So you get some kind of like dub techno kind of stabs.
Sample that.
So yeah, what I would do in this part of the process is basically leave my computer recording everything into audio, and I'm will leave like jam around with one sound and one plugin for maybe like half an hour, sometimes like longer sometimes, and just record all the audio and basically just see, kind of experiment with how far I can push it and like just see what happens. It's completely kind of up to the process, kind of, yeah.
And if you stumble across a moment where that really excites you,
Yeah.
you're really tempted to stop recording and start working on it, or do you just clock the time and then still?
Yeah, I'd maybe leave it recording for a bit, but I kind of like the fact that you can't change it all, which is, I guess, like kind of a difference with Simon. That I like the fact that if it's just a little bit of audio, I have to then loop that, and then I'll bounce, because it's bounced, then I'll just start processing that again. So it's like a starting point I'm looking for more than anything else. But yeah, I mean, this kind of thing is amazing because you can go really far into one thing, but then I can just change the preset. I use lots of presets as well. And then you got something entirely different. So yeah, I mean, often what I would do is, yeah, just record a load on kind of one plugin and then do a similar process with the bounced audio on like another plugin, or start cutting out little bits. Like I'll listen through everything, cut out bits, and then think how I could process them more. So maybe I'll take this little section and then of like experimentation, and then add like a different delay onto it or something else, and start building up like more layers basically to the sound design. And I definitely think a lot about kind of how like what my experimentation like sonically could like making me feel, or what it's kind of like the image it gives me, and then expanding on that more. So those kind of quite tonal stabs sound, they kind of remind me of like dub techno and stuff like that a bit. So maybe I would look to kind of experiment more in that way and think of other ways I could do that, and basically push. I'm kind of trying to make like an identity to the track. And
so would that dictate the genre that you may explore?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of genre, like I kind of just, I don't know, I kind of make it up as I go along, I guess, a bit.
I was going to say, because another question I was going to ask was, and this is the same with both of you, I mean, I get the sense that genre is not your thing initially. It's about sound and taking inspiration from what you record, whether it's audio or whether it's MIDI. But at some point you have to make sense, assuming it's for the dance floor, that is, you have to make sense of it rhythmically, whether you stick a 4 to the floor, which is obviously the easy thing to do, or you look at something that's a little bit more interesting, right? So in your case, you may go down a dub techno route for a while, perhaps, with this, but perhaps?
Yeah, so, I mean, basically with everything I do, I'm looking to avoid it sitting too much in a box in terms of genre. So I will always like make an effort to, yeah, if I'm making something which sounds like a techno track, I'll probably put some kind of weird rhythm to the kick drum or like something, because I never really want to make music which fits in a box quite like that. So I kind of make a real effort in terms of if I use like a certain trope, I'll like just set a rule that I can't do anything else like that.
Simo, are you the same?
Yeah, like the danger with club music is that you have like many rules. It's you have many rules to follow, like the drop, the intro, the outro. So it can be like a bit difficult if you. I mean, if you think into a club track, then you will be your brain is a bit formatted. So while I'm experimenting, I don't have any goals. As I said, like the goal is what I'm doing right now. But yeah, I've got some when I woke up in the morning and I go to the studio. Depending on the mood, like one day I want to make a club track, or another day I want to make like some ambient or more like musical stuff. So there is, I said there is no goal, but at the end there is still like one. Depending on the ideas I've got, I'm gonna seek into my box of ideas, and then I'm gonna maybe decide to make like a club track or something different. But so yeah, this is after the first process of having these big ideas, I'm gonna decide. But on the first step, I don't have any idea, and I don't want to think about genres and stuff like that. I think it's I'm trying not to have any limits.
Sure. And is that a conscious decision? I get the sense as a conscious decision for both of you, like anti-genre. It's about creating your own in a way, depending on what mood you're in and where the audio or MIDI takes you. So do you think you're both taking risks in that respect?
I mean, it's a risk, and it's not a risk at the same time, because the more you have a personal sound, and the more you're gonna have like a reward from it. So there is, I mean, when I make music, what I want is try to add something new. I don't want to make something that that has already been done. So this is, I think, one of the main aspect. I mean, one of the main idea. It's a bit like maybe megalomaniac to think that you can like do something new and something like fresh, but you have in a way to think like that to bring something new. So yeah, I think this is I mean, when I'm DJing, I love to play old records, but when I making music, the process is completely different. I want something fresh and new.
Same vibe, right?
Yeah, pretty similar. I think. I think you're also, as like an artist, able to actually, with time, like kind of set the agenda of what people listen to. And like, techno at one point was new, and probably a lot of people thought that wouldn't like work and no one was going to listen to that. But so not that it's really about kind of making a new genre, but I think people can like come around to lots of stuff which is maybe less conventional, for like want of a better word. I don't really think, similar to Simon, like there's not really much point for me in kind of imitating something which has been done before and probably was done better 20 years ago. Like,
until, of course, some journalist says, "Oh, have you heard this Batu beat, or Simo Cell beat?" Then you're kind of mashed up. Let me ask these guys. You got any questions? You got questions that you'd like to ask? Okay, nope, that's all right. The question at the back there.
I use a Studio One, the pre-Sonos AW.
Okay.
It's not that well known, but it's really nice. I think like it's somewhere in between, like probably like Pro Tools and Ableton.
Have you always been a Studio One person?
No, I used to use Logic before that, but it's quite similar to Logic in a lot of ways. So yeah, I got to a point where I was kind of fed up with Logic and how slow it was to use, and came across it. But I'm quite happy I use something which not many other people know about.
For now. Another question at the front here.
Did you ever feel the pressure of using hardware?
So the question was after the question. Did you ever have the pressure or the want to use hardware? So maybe start with you, Simo.
Yeah, so when I started making music, I started to make music with my computer because I didn't have like enough money to buy hardware. And after one point, I started to look for a studio. After my first release, so my first release was made essentially on a computer, but I felt a bit bad about it, like a bit like I was not considering myself as a producer because I was just making music on a computer, which was a stupid idea, but like it was part of the process. So I started to work in a studio full of gears, and I like spent like maybe like 6 or 8 months trying to jam with machines and stuff like that. But I just realized that it was not my. I mean, I learned with computer, and I just realized that it was my favorite way to make music. Every time I was jamming with with gears, with a drum machine or anything, after that I was going back to my laptop. So basically, I use my laptop as the main source, and from time to time, I use gears just to have fun, or sometime when I'm stuck with my computer and if I don't have any ideas, I'm gonna plug some gears, because as I've got many stuff at the studio, it's like pretty cool. And psychologically speaking, I know that I've got a backup. Like if I'm stuck with a computer, I can use gears. Even if I don't use gears, it helps to have like kind of a backup and other options.
Nice one. I'm going to ask a question that they're too afraid to ask, because I can see it in their eyes. So with all this experimentation, it's brilliant. So you've got lots of ideas, hours of terabytes of audio, hundreds of MIDI clips. What tips or workflow tips do you have to kind of start honing in on an actual track?
This is one of the. Well, it's a big question. Lots of people ask this question. It's hard to like turn from ideas to like a main structure. So basically, as I said, I need to have many ideas, and then I will try to like play those ideas together and see what's working. And at one point, I don't know, but I know that I can do something with those ideas, and I try to like build 2 or 3 minutes, but with different ideas. I have to bring a drop. So, as I said, there are rules in club music. So, I need to have a strong drop, and after that. But this is not the only thing. I need also to have other ideas. So, basically, when you don't know what to do with your loop, is that you don't have enough ideas. So, if you're stuck, like my vision is like
just create more.
Just do more. Just try to mess around more. So, if you just have 1 minute and then you're like, oh, where is it going? Then just go back to experimentation. You have to. I need to have all those elements ready before I can make the full structure.
So there's lots of compare and contrast. Make sure there's a drop. Compare, contrast. Make sure there's a drop. That kind of vibe. Yeah.
Yeah.
The same with you, but.
Yeah. I definitely. Yeah, I always collect everything I'm making, and so if I do like a long jam and I cut out certain bits of it, then I'm going to keep all of them. And there is like a part of it where you're putting, you're like, maybe having like building up some drums and then like putting different things that you've saved on top of it or whatever. But I think it's really the whole experimentation process is about, rather than being like, oh, here's the start of a track, I'm going to use like this chord. It's more like when you're invested in it a bit more and you've put some time into like the experimentation process, that's when you get like more of like a proper inspiration, and it's less forced. It becomes more like natural. So it's all about trying to be as natural as possible. And I find experimenting and these kind of processes of like bouncing out sounds or whatever is kind of how I get to that point. So in terms of how I make when the point where I decide on the track, it's kind of that bit's kind of quite easy when I get to the right point. Like it just kind of clicks into place and I have an idea of what I want to do. It's when you've got a certain sound that you like latch onto and you're like, oh, the track could go this way. And then it's kind of like a case for me of like, just putting in the hours of like actually making that from a loop into like a fully finished track.
So included in this process, are you thinking about the role that each of the sounds play? I mean, clearly the drums are covered in your department, and perhaps you might have, say, some, I guess, melodic element. But when you're shaping this track, are you thinking, okay, something has to play the role of a bass, something has to play the role of a melody, something has to play the role of a counter, top line, or whatever? Is that in your consciousness or not?
I think it probably is. Like, quite a lot more than it would be hard to like let go of any of that because there is a certain point, even if it's like a club track which is going to fit between different genres, like, you know, there are certain, if it's going to be played in a club, you do have to adhere to like some level of kind of like formula, I guess, but it would be good to get rid of more of that probably. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, it's a bit strange to think in terms of like checklist like this, but yeah, in a way, you're right. You at some point, even if it's not even if you're not aware of that process, maybe like you try to bring a melody. I mean, yeah, if you just have drums, then you say, oh, it's just a DJ tool, so I need to bring melody and stuff like that. So yeah, you have some rules, as I said.
So it is in your consciousness, you know, in terms of your experiences as a DJ and of course composers, you know that you have to have, well, you should consider having these elements in your overall track of like, yeah.
I think like both of us try and make music which is probably on like the slightly more like ambitious end for like DJs in clubs, but I mean we definitely still want to make music which is played in clubs and that you can dance to, and it would be nice to live in a world where like an ambient track would go off in a club at 3 in the morning. But
well, it has been possible in the past. Maybe we'll see if it's possible again. I mean, what's really cool about you know your both your approaches is this kind of, you know, this kind of like relationship. It's almost like you're trying to court convention with unconvention. Do you know what I mean? Trying to find this place where you can both sit, where you can create music that just comes from randomness and ideas, and the dance floor gets it. Do you know what I mean? Would you say that's the journey that you're both on?
Yeah. I mean, we our mind is conditioned. We don't have any choices like this. So the fact is, we try to accept this, and we have like some backgrounds, a culture, but at the same time, we want to try to leave this part and try to bring something new. So there is like this as you said, this balance between a conditioned mind and trying to push forward, I guess.
I think I agree with that, but I also think like this way it feels more honest. I don't think if I was writing music which really fit into a specific genre, I don't know how for me personally, like I don't really know where like actual kind of self-expression comes into that quite so much.
But what's super interesting about what you've just said is that there's something about the permission to not give a shit. Do you know what I mean? I think because the fact that a lot of the sound source comes from just experimenting or just trying stuff out and not taking responsibility for whether it's a piano or not, or whether it's the delay is a dotted 16th or whatever, and actually you're just capturing sound and making sense of it. I guess you're giving yourself permission to just pursue sound. Would you say that's the case, rather than saying, okay?
Yeah, it's the case, but like there is something to have in mind is when you're like, for example, when you're making music to release an EP, a club, when it comes to club music, I just speak about club music, you know. You always think when you start to write a new EP, I have to write a A1 track, like a track that works in club, because I also want my EP to work and I want DJ to play it. Like, I mean, in a way, it shouldn't be like this, but like if you're doing club music, this is one of my dreams when I started to make club music was to see my favorite DJs playing my stuff, you know. So I would say like after, when you have a strong club track, after that you can, like as you said, like not giving a shit about things and then try to experiment and do something without any rules, stuff like try to push forward. But yeah, there is something. It's hard to like let it go. Like this idea of a A1 is hard to it's hard to forget this idea of a A1 track.
It's all about the record shops, man. A1.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Questions from you guys. Question in the back here. So do you guys have your own studios to work from? Batu, maybe you start.
I've always produced in my bedroom.
So in terms of your working environment, what does it look like?
Yeah, like monitors and then like an audio interface and then a computer. I've got a desktop. Yeah, I've got like a desktop computer at the moment. But yeah, pretty limited.
Simo, what's your setup?
Yeah, I've got a studio. I'm working in a studio. We're sharing a studio with a friend of mine. It's like my office. So basically, even if I work on my laptop, I go there, and it's like I'm trying to separate, trying to have like a decent environment to work, and I don't have Wi-Fi there. So basically, when I'm there, I'm just making music. I've got like monitors, my laptop. When I do the mix down, you mean? Yeah. I use many different sources. Like I use, doing myself, not master. Yeah, no. But
Any more questions? Let's get them in, man. Let's get them in. So mixing, you want to know about mixing, you know about mastering, what else? Anything else? Sure. Nothing? Okay, distribution? No? Let's get it stacked in, man. So, okay, hold on, man. So, first things first. So,
my favorite dish is pasta.
I love this job. Mixing is a really cool one. So thank you for that. So, given your experimental approach to creating music, does the mixdown a reflection of the experimentation? And what I mean by that is, if you're crafting the rhythm and the sounds, whatever you end up with, is that what it is? Or do you have to think, okay, the collage is there, now I have to sit down and balance it and really think about compressing the drums or whatever, that kind of thing. So is that part of it?
I think, in terms of, I guess it would be really easy to just like get a sample and whack a load of plugins on it and make it into a weird sound. But actually, where the kind of like maybe more of like the nuances is making those sounds really good and having them kind of sitting compositionally in their own like spaces. So the way things interact works kind of easily. I tend to find like the best tracks I write need actually very little like mixing at the end, because the sounds just like work together more naturally. I think if you're like spending like months like changing the EQ and the compression to something, then it's probably wasn't that good in the first place.
And I guess for you as well, the sound is the sound. You know, I guess when you're building the track, you're thinking about the relationship between them in terms of maybe balance or dynamics, rather than that obviously needs sidechain compression, that obviously needs a low pass filter, that kind of thing.
I mean, all those tools are really helpful, but I think, the more, like someone explained it to me before, like, you know, if you went and saw like the best orchestra in the world, they're just going to sound like great in the room, you know, and it's kind of like a little bit of that. It's like if the parts are fitting together, then it should sound pretty good to start with, and you're not going to need to like really work the sounds too much. I think a lot of it comes down to like quality of sounds. I find like using high quality samples, using good plugins, making sure like nothing's like distorting in the chain of plugins. This kind of stuff like can give you like a really nice clarity to things. And then if you've got a few nice elements like sitting together, all naturally occupying different ranges, then things tend to...
Yeah. Same with you, Simo, right?
No, I've got a very different process.
Obviously.
Yeah. So when I finish a track, I stopped to listen to the track like for 2 months, something like that, and I do the mix down after. Sometimes the mix down takes even more time than the writing, because when I'm writing a track, I'm not using lots of EQs or stuff like that, and I'm doing so. Basically, when I finish a track, then it doesn't sound really good, but I already know, I already have in mind how it could sound, and then it's like lots of. I'm going to clubs, trying the mix down, going back, changing stuff, going to clubs again, going back. So there is like a way on back process. I don't know if you, Also, I've got the chance to, in Paris, some friend of mine can allow me to go to a club before the party starts. So I go there, I try the track alone.
Good friend.
Yeah. Then I've got like a notebook, I wrote some stuff, then I go back to the studio. It's a pretty long process for me. to do the mix down. But yeah, I separate those two processes. Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to add something
Go for it.
about like when we were experimenting and stuff like that. One very important thing as well is to have like friends and to have people that you trust, so you can send them tracks. And we never spoke about we don't speak about those kind of things. And I've got some friends, they don't want to, they feel ashamed, they don't want to give their track to others because they think, oh, it's not that good. But like sometimes you're not very happy with what you're doing and you send the tracks, the demo, to someone you respect, and they say, oh yeah, it's working. And then so it changed your view, it changed your image of the track, because sometimes you're listening to a track for like maybe like 20 times, 30 times, 50 times, and then you're not very objective. So having some others' mind, other brains can help.
And brutal honesty is a good thing, right? In that case,
Right?
Brutal honesty.
Yeah. It's like yeah. Of course, you have to send the tracks to true friends. Of course, yeah.
Okay, but maybe a last couple of questions before we finish. Cool. Question here.
Yeah, it might be quite subjective, but when you separate like your sound design with your composition, is there like a time frame between, just to avoid like any like ear fatigue of the sounds you've made, so that you don't get too sidetracked, or just like any tips for speeding up the workflow when it comes to the composition?
So the question was, great question, by the way. In terms of the ideation or the composition and the music production, how do you divvy up the time between them all? Or do you? And if you do, what time frame are we talking?
I think as much as you can, you want to just, the experiments need to come to kind of like a natural conclusion.
Yeah, so I find I get too excited and then I just
Yeah.
down the track.
Yeah.
You know, I've just rinsed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know. It might be like, you know, writing music for quite a while. Like I've been doing this for like 10 years now, but it increasingly is like harder for me to get excited about something I'm writing. So I think it tends to be. But there is like as I was saying, there'll be periods of time where there's hours going by, and I'm like, I don't actually have anything. Like I could probably delete all of this, but it's still like that is actually as much part of the journey, is getting to a point where you're gonna like come across something which you like and which you can base a track around. So I think you've got to try and be patient. Generally for music production, patience is probably like the most important quality to have, because it's difficult and it takes a long time. But yeah, in terms of like ear fatigue, taking breaks is like a really, really good thing to do. I'd like recommend to anyone to take like a 10-minute break every like hour, or at least, you know, like, because your ears will completely change with time. And like when you do a mix down, like do it first thing in the morning and stuff like that. Like I think about that stuff quite a lot. Like I'll listen to tracks first thing in the morning before I even listen to anything else. But yeah, your ears do change like massively when they're fatigued. So it's something to keep in mind.
Simo?
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes you're like very excited when you get ideas, and then you don't have to think. If you're excited, then go and try to write a track. I mean, sometimes we're thinking too hard, and one of the most important thing is to avoid that. To learn how to let it go and just like follow what's your instinct say to you. And sometimes like you're making like using arpeggiator and using the computer to make MIDI clips, as I said, and then it's not working. So it's like you're spending maybe like half a day trying to make MIDI clips and nothing is happening. So basically, it's the same. You have to learn how to let it go and just maybe like delete this project, or not delete, but just like put it in a exactly. And the frustration is very important as well. It's part of the process. You can't go to the studio and make a new interesting track every day. Like sometimes it's just you're blocked, and the fact that you're blocked the fact that you're limited and blocked will lead you to another ideas or something like that. So when you're just when you don't know what to do, then you can like see a tutorial, learn new skills. So it's like a process. Sometimes it's like working and it's nice. Sometimes it's not working or just learning new stuff, and it's just like cycles like this.
Nice one. So to conclude, what's next for you guys, apart from DJing tonight, which you can talk about, of course, but sound-wise and experimental sound-wise, when can we next hear something?
I'm trying to finish a new EP, so yeah, that'll be done at some point.
When we say some point, is that a Batu 3 months, 6 years? What are we talking?
I hope it'll be finished in the next month or so, so our next year, maybe.
Are you happy with the development so far?
Yeah. So it's been like an interesting development where, yeah, I guess I kind of wrote a track which had a certain sound and a certain process involved of like using some quite colourful kind of cut-up vocal kind of things, which is probably quite different to what I'm usually known for. So I kind of based it off that. So kind of in the same way, maybe with a track, I'll like come across a sound and expand on one element. It was kind of like an EP process of that, of kind of like having kind of a sonic concept in a way to tie it together. But
Sort me out, mate. Simo?
Yeah, I'm trying to finish a new EP as well. It's always the answer, I guess. Yeah, I've just released like an EP this month on a label from Lyon, Brothers from Different Mothers. It was like experimentation around the 90 BPM zone. Okay, and so now I'm just working on a new EP, and I've been working with some other artists recently. So we're trying to finish collaborations as well. I started to work with like a singer, so it's like a very different project, not as Simo Cell, which is like pretty interesting because like I don't have any limits. It's like when I'm producing as Simo Cell, I try to be like coherent in a way and try to focus like one specific line. And this is it's something completely different and completely new, so I can try like many things, and for the moment we're just like having fun and even like bringing some guitar or stuff like that. So it's something I've never done before, and it's like pretty fresh. That's it.
And obviously you've forgotten to mention this apparent collaboration between you two, apparently.
Yeah, it should be out in 2022.
25. Simo Cell, Batu, thank you very much, man.